All right, quick poll. Raise your hand if you have a relationship in your life that's meaningful to you. Okay, I assumed, but always good to check our assumptions. I'm saying this because while I'll be focusing today on a parent-child relationship, please know that everything I'm talking about is applicable to any meaningful relationship. So with that in mind, let's jump in. So it's Sunday night. I'm in my kitchen. I just finished cooking dinner for my family, and I am on edge. I'm exhausted. I haven't been sleeping well. I'm anxious about the upcoming work week. I'm overwhelmed by all the items on my unfinished to-do list. And then my son walks into the kitchen. He looks at the table and whines, "Chicken again? Disgusting." And that's it. I snap. I look at him and I yell, "What is wrong with you? Can you be grateful for one thing in your life?" And things get worse from there. He screams, "I hate you." He runs out of the room and he slams his bedroom door. And now my self-loathing session begins as I say to myself, what is wrong with me? I've messed up my kid forever. Well, if you're a parent, you've probably felt that pain. For me, it comes with an extra layer of shame. I'm a clinical psychologist, and my specialty is helping people become better parents. And yet, this is true as well. There is no such thing as a perfect parent. Mistakes and struggles, they come with the job, but no one tells us what to do next. Do we just move on? Kind of just pretend the whole thing never happened? Or if I say something, what are the words? Well, for years, as a clinical psychologist in private practice, I saw client after client struggle with this question. And now, as the creator of the parenting content and community platform Good Inside, I see millions of parents around the globe struggle with this issue. All parents yell. No one knows what to do next. Well, I'm determined to fill this gap. After all, there's almost nothing within our interpersonal relationships that can have as much impact as repair. Whenever a parent asks me, what one parenting strategy should I focus on, I always say the same thing: get good at repair. So what is repair? Repair is the act of going back to a moment of disconnection, taking responsibility for your behavior, and acknowledging the impact it had on another. And I want to differentiate a repair from an apology, because one apology often looks to shut a conversation down. Hey, I'm sorry I yelled. Can we move on now? A good repair opens one up. And if you think about what it means to get good at repair, there's so much baked in realism and hope and possibility. Repair assumes there's been a rupture. So to repair, you have to mess up or fall short of someone else's expectations. Which means the next time I snap at my kid or my husband or my work colleague, instead of berating myself like I did that night in the kitchen, I try to remind myself I'm focusing on getting good at repair. Step one is rupture. Check that off. I crushed it. Step two is repair. I can do this. I'm actually right on track. So let's get back to my example. I'm in the kitchen, my son is in his room. Well, what will happen if I don't repair? That's really important to understand and helps us make a decision about what to do next. Well, here are the facts. My son is alone, overwhelmed, and in a state of distress because, let's face it, his mom just became scary mom. And now he has to figure out a way to get back to feeling safe and secure. And if I don't go help him do that through making a repair, he has to rely on one of the only coping mechanisms he has at his own disposal: self-blame. Self-blame sounds like this: something's wrong with me. I'm unlovable. I make bad things happen. Ronald Fairbairn may have said it best when he wrote that for kids, it is better to be a sinner in a world ruled by God than to live in a world ruled by the devil. In other words, it's actually adaptive for a child to internalize badness and fault, because at least then they can hold on to the idea that their parents and the world around them is safe and good. And while self-blame works for us in childhood, we all know it works against us in adulthood. Something's wrong with me. I make bad things happen. I'm unlovable. These are the core fears of so many adults. But really, we see here, they are actually the childhood stories we wrote when we were left alone following distressing events that went unrepaired. Plus, adults with self-blame are vulnerable to depression, anxiety, deep feelings of worthlessness, none of which we want for our kids. And we can do better. And it doesn't mean we have to be perfect. When you repair, you go further than removing a child's story of self-blame. You get to add in all the elements that were missing in the first place. Safety, connection, coherence, love, goodness. It's as if you're saying to a child, I will not let this chapter of your life end in self-blame. Yes, this chapter will still contain the event of yelling, but I can ensure this chapter has a different ending, and therefore a different title and theme and lesson learned. We know that memory is original events combined with every other time you've remembered that event. This is why therapy is helpful, right? When you remember painful experiences from your past within a safer and more connected relationship, the event remains, but your story of the event, it changes. And then you change. With repair, we effectively change the past. So let's write a better story. Let's learn how to repair. Step 1, repair with yourself. That's right. I mean, you can't offer compassion or groundedness or understanding to someone else before you access those qualities within yourself. Self-repair means separating your identity, who you are, from your behavior, what you did. For me, it means telling myself 2 things are true. I'm not proud of my latest behavior, and my latest behavior doesn't define me. Even as I struggle on the outside, I remain good inside. I can then start to see that I'm a good parent, identity, who was having a hard time, behavior, and no, this doesn't let me off the hook. This is precisely what leaves me on the hook for change. Because now that I've replaced my spiral with groundedness, I can actually use my energy toward thinking about what I want to do differently the next time. Oh, and I can now use my energy to go repair with my son. Step 2, repair with your child. There's no exact formula. I often think about 3 elements. Name what happened, take responsibility, state what you would do differently the next time. It could come together like this. Hey, I keep thinking about what happened the other night in the kitchen. I'm sorry I yelled. I'm sure that felt scary, and it wasn't your fault. I'm working on staying calm, even when I'm frustrated. A 15-second intervention can have a lifelong impact. I've replaced my child's story of self-blame with a story of self-trust and safety and connection. I mean, what a massive upgrade. And to give a little more clarity around how to repair, I want to share a few examples of what I call not repair, which are things that come more naturally to most of us, definitely me included. Hey, I'm sorry I yelled at you in the kitchen, but if you wouldn't have complained about dinner, it wouldn't have happened. Been there, okay? Or, you really need to be grateful for things in your life, like a home-cooked meal. Then you won't get yelled at. Not only do these interventions fail at the goal of reconnection, they also insinuate that your child caused your reaction, which simply isn't true and isn't a model of emotion regulation we want to pass on to the next generation. So let's say we've all resisted the "it was your fault anyway" not repairs, and have instead prioritized a repair that allows us to reconnect. What might the impact be? What might that look like in adulthood? My adult child won't spiral in self-blame when they make a mistake and won't take on blame for someone else's mistake. My adult child will know how to take responsibility for their behavior because you've modeled how to take responsibility for yours. Repairing with a child today sets the stage for these critical adult relationship patterns. Plus, it gets better. Now that I've reconnected with my son, I can do something really impactful. I can teach him a skill he didn't have in the first place, which is how kids actually change their behavior. So maybe the next day I say, you're not always gonna like what I make for dinner. Instead of saying, "that's disgusting," I wonder if you could say, "not my favorite." Now I'm teaching him how to regulate his understandable disappointment and communicate effectively and respectfully with another person. That never would have happened if instead I had been blaming him for my reaction. So here's the point where you might have a lingering concern. Maybe you're thinking, I have a feeling my kid's older than your kid. I think it's too late. Or, I've done a lot worse than you did in the kitchen. Maybe it's too late. Well, I mean this. If you have only one takeaway from this talk, please let this be it. It is not too late. It is never too late. How do I know? Well, imagine right after this, you get a call from one of your parents. And if neither of your parents are alive, imagine finding and opening a letter you hadn't seen till that moment. Okay, walk through this with me. Here's the call. "Hey, I know this sounds out of the blue, but I've been thinking a lot about your childhood. And I think there were a lot of moments that felt really bad to you. And you were right to feel that way. Those moments weren't your fault. They were times when I was struggling, and if I could have gone back, I would have stepped aside. I would have calmed myself down and then found you to help you with whatever you were struggling with. I'm sorry. And if you're ever willing to talk to me about any of those moments, I'll listen. I won't listen to have a rebuttal. I'll listen to understand. I love you." I don't know many adults who don't have a fairly visceral reaction to that exercise. I often hear, "Why am I crying?" Or, "Listen, that wouldn't change everything, but it might change some things." Well, I definitely do not special in math, but here's something I know with certainty. If you have a child, that child is younger than you are. Always true. The story of their life is shorter and even more amenable to editing. So if that imagined exercise had an impact on you, imagine the impact an actual repair will have on your child. See, I told you, it's never too late.
Have you ever stopped to think, why is it that only very few people have an amazing relationship? Did they just get lucky? Are they the chosen ones, perhaps? I think seriously, most of us would agree, wouldn't we, that great relationships take work. The problem is, more often than not, we have no idea what to work on. Well, over the last 20 plus years now, working with countless couples, we've observed that all successful relationships, every one of them, exhibit 4 simple yet fundamental habits which we want to share with you over the next 15 minutes or so. The great news is that these are habits that we can all learn and develop. And when we do, we significantly increase our chances of having one of those amazing relationships. If we don't, chances are you probably never will. Every failing relationship we've ever seen has lacked one or more of these habits. As we were reminded just recently over Sunday lunch.
And what a Sunday lunch that was. We met this couple socially, connected well with them because we shared similar city backgrounds. Let's call them Rachel and Steve. So we invited them to have lunch with us to discuss the business that Steve wanted to launch. But as we ate and chatted, we started sensing that Rachel wasn't happy at all. So I leaned across and I said, Rachel, what do you think about this business idea? And her response said it all. I know nothing about this, and he never discusses anything with me. So John and I just exchanged quick glances to say, this is serious, but we're going there. And then suddenly, the thin wallpaper covering the cracks just started to peel off. And out tumbled the frustration and the disappointment and the anger and the fact that Steve was working away from home more and more. And when he did come home on the weekends, he would sleep downstairs in the living room sofa. And then Steve dropped the bomb. You know that if it wasn't for those two boys, I'd have left you a long time ago. Now, we do spicy food, but, but that was a bit more spice than we were planning for Sunday lunch.
Precisely. Now, we'll come back to Rachel and Steve's story, but I guess you already know their story is by no means unique. Let me share some stats with you. With divorce rates around 40% in much of the developed world, and cohabiting couples breaking up at much higher rates of 60 to 70%, the stats tell us that around half, 50% of all long-term couples simply not going the distance. Now, what that tells us, and don't look around now, but either you or the person sitting right next to you is a Rachel or a Steve. It is. That's the reality.
And the mental health.
Now, this emotional trauma is also spilling over and impacting our mental health. In their 2016 report, the Mental Health Foundation issued the stark warning that the absence of quality relationships is, get this, it's killing us faster than obesity and lack of exercise. And all of this is having an impact on the next generation as well. Research out of the Marriage Foundation has shown that the single biggest predictor of teenage mental health is, guess what? Family breakdown. Their research goes on to show that where couples separate, the children are 10 to 15% more likely to have mental health problems than where the couple stays together. These are big numbers. Now, all of this goes to explain why the epicenter of mental health today is currently in our 16 to 24-year-olds. That's where it is. And of course, none of this is without cost. Family breakdown in the UK is costing us, UK taxpayers, a whopping £51 billion a year. That's a huge number. It's almost half what it costs to run the entire National Health Service. Relationship breakdown is a huge, huge problem.
It is. And to solve a problem of this scale, borrowing a phrase from medical science, what we need are better fences at the top of the cliffs rather than just more ambulances at the bottom. And in relationship land, these 4 habits are strong fences. You see, all relationships go over a similar set of hurdles triggered by life events. It could be setting up house together, or having that first baby, or in a work context, being promoted to positions that involve or demand more time away from home. And so these hurdles show up as unmet expectations, poor conflict resolution styles, trust and respect issues, and poor communication. Outside of abusive relationships, success comes from being equipped